Hello everyone, and thanks for coming back to the channel. Today we're taking a look at the Xing 1105 6000 kV motors. I've done some motor testing, motor flight testing. I don't have a thrust stand or any equipment like that. What I do is I put them on a quad and I go out and I fly them and I compare them to other experiences that I had on other quads. And the first thing we need to get to is the weight. Of course, I've already had this on a quad. I forgot to weigh in before I trimmed the wire, so this will be a trimmed weight. They weigh 6.38 grams. And in the flight footage that you're about to see, I'm comparing them in a flight experience sense to the Mamba motors, the 1105 5500 kV, and I am flying them on the HQ bi-blades that are 3x2s. And if you want to, down here in the bottom corner, I'll put a little bit of flight footage of what I'm comparing it to on the Twig. I have talked about the Mamba motors a couple times in the past, recommending them during a couple other videos. The short story is, if you don't want to watch the flights, I think if you want a performance and more efficient motor, and you're not going for the look side of things, the Mamba motors, the 1105 5500 kV, is a better match for quads weighing below 70 grams running that 3x2 HQ bi-blade prop. I'll put a time code linked down in the video description below to the two flights that I took with the Twig. You can, of course, watch the full review if you would like to know more details about that quad. Quite a fun little setup. Let's get into the flight footage with these motors. So I've blocked out the OSD that calls out the craft name in this particular case, and I did that because I don't want, the review isn't done for one, and I don't want it to color your perception of the quad that I'll be reviewing. It's a custom build, and so often when we're reviewing quads, the motor and prop combination is such an important choice, and that's why I do these motor reviews in flight. Thrust stands can be very valuable to give you some baseline data. Of course, thrust and efficiency changes once you get them in the air. And depending upon the prop and how it feels, there's a lot of things we can't get from a thrust stand. Plus, I don't have one, so I can't do a thrust stand review video anyways. But if you're watching this footage and you're thinking that it's relatively fast, again, I would encourage you to go back and look at the Twig videos, because I am not flying as fast or as hard as I was in the Twig videos. And we're going to find we get about 20 to 25 seconds less of flight footage. So if I were to go a little bit harder, which has a fairly dramatic impact on the battery, when you go just that extra bit faster and you're doing these at-speed turns a little bit harder and quicker, and you're trying to get around these trees a little faster, it does have a fairly dramatic impact on your battery. So that's something that I think if you're really questioning this, that you should go back and watch those two flight reviews on the Twig. I've said that many times, and it's a point I need to drive home, because if you haven't seen it in a while and you watch this flight, you might think, oh, that's very comparable or very good. You know, I'm going to go ahead and get these motors and give them a go. And I wouldn't tell you not to get these motors. It's not that they're bad. It's just that they're not as good as the Diatone 1105 5500 kV motors. I also found that the temperature on the motors itself was a little bit higher. Now, it has been unseasonably warm here recently. We did have a few days where I was running these motors that it got up into the low 90s, which is a little bit unusual for this time of year. But I also found that the motors were quite a bit hotter than I found on the 1105, the Diatone 1105 5500 kV, and really other motors in general. Now, they weren't smoking hot to where I would say, yeah, there's a tuning problem. They're just running hot. I think some motors run hotter than others. But as you see here, we come down at the end of the flight. We've got 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and our battery is at 3.66 volts per cell, which is very comparable to what the end of the Twig flights came in at. So I really wanted these motors to really perform just top notch, because they are really cool looking motors. I like the fact that they've gone and done something different with the bell design, but unfortunately, if you're looking at performance and not necessarily aesthetics, this is a motor I wouldn't necessarily use. I would use the Diatone 1105 5500 kV motors. I'll put a link in the video description to both these motors if you want to check out specs and prices and compare them also against the 1105 5500 kV Diatone motors, and I'll link those down below. That you can get these in various sources. They've been around for a few weeks now, so you should be able to pick them up if they're in stock at a number of different vendors. So if you're flying this HQ 3x2 prop on a sub 70 gram or about 70 gram quad, I would recommend those motors over these motors. If you have any comments, questions, suggestions, or otherwise, please let me know in the section down below. I appreciate your time, and thanks for watching.